Frankston track, there was a group of people trying to get Frankston track up and going. Naturally, there was tracks happening everywhere, so they wanted one in Frankston. And all I can remember, because I was only a kid, I remember all the adults getting together and they were lobbying Frankston Council to get some land and do this and do that, and it was going back and forward and round in circles. And they ended up giving them something down in the back there somewhere. And once they did that, it pretty much got up and going. And I guess designs of the track and that were thrown around. What can we do? What do we do here? Can we do something different? I put something forward, just as a kid, just drew something up, put it forward and said, here, this is what we got. And that's actually the design of the track that they worked with, and did that.
My dad, Lindsay Wallace, he took on the presidency role at the track. I think it may have been in the early 90s. He always liked to get involved with the sports that we were playing in, or racing in as it be. And he took on that role, I can't remember for how long, but it was a number of years.
Lindsay, unbeknown to me, was grooming me to take over. And so you ended up as the vice president, then end up as the president. And that was pretty hard work back then, and it was always difficult. I suppose it hasn't changed much now, to get people involved, to want to do other jobs, etc. But I was doing the Metro Plate, I was going to the meetings in the city, I was doing all those sort of things. And yeah, it was pretty hard work, but we even used to do, the Frankston Council used to have a day. And that again, it was good to get with the council and two different things, but gee, parents would just dump them off. It was like a child mining centre. They're all riding death traps. But the thing was about the kids having a good time. And I don't know how many end up coming on board full time, but I think it was worth the effort back then. Lindsay, he used to sell shark watches, and I think that's where the whole, Frankston Sharks come from. And part of his promotional stuff was they had blow-up sharks. Anyway, we tied some strings on it and strapped it on Jamie Wallace's back and for one of the races. And there he was running around with this shark on his back with its tail wagging, and it was so funny.
We started the whole Hell Track theme at Frankston, and that was based around when we redesigned the track. The track used to have pretty much a back-to-back straight in the first straight, and then the redesign of the track was such that it had a big sweeping first berm, which then created a sort of a crater in the middle, and that's where we had, I guess, a lake.
The track used to have a lake in the middle, and I remember, I think it was not Sturzacker.
Between Rawson?
No, not Rawson.
Someone ended up in it.
Someone spun out. Patch, I think it might have been Dean Patch, spun out and ended up in the lake. I think it was Dean. It's going back a long way.
I actually remember the first time I stepped up onto this gate, and the whole concept and the way to work the gate was a big handle that you used to pull up, lifting this, what felt like 1,000-kilo gate, used to lock into place, and you had a foot operation that dropped the gate.
My dad made all the steel and the starting gate and all that, and weighed a ton and didn't drop sometimes. And but when it did, it did.
It didn't matter what the random starts that you get nowadays with gates. We didn't have any of that. It depended on the person that was operating the gate and pushing their foot on the actual pedal to make the gate drop. The good old third straight of Frankston. There used to be a jump called the Manahorn, or the Canyon that some other people called it. And you only had two little tiny jumps, little doubles that would have been about 4 feet in length each. Very easy and very fast to jump. But then this jump that was here, it was quite literally a pedal as fast as you can, flat, no lip, drop off into a big roller. Now that was probably about 20 feet that you had to clear worth of bunny hop. And I made it my goal when I was 12 years of age down here, that one day I would do it. And I think at around about 15 or 16, I finally got up the nerve to do it, but geez, it took a lot.
Riding the third straight back in the early 2000s, there was a triple there. And it had this fearsome reputation. It was just massive, and it was this concrete lip that just shot you into oblivion. And it was all for only the bravest or most psychotic would attempt this thing. And I think it was Simon Grigg, one of the Grigg boys, hit this thing up, and he's 50-50'd the landing, and the bike's ripped in half. No, the fork snapped off at the crown, and the wheels come off the bike with such force that it shot forward and hit the rider in front of him and knocked him off the bike. It was just something you couldn't script. It was incredible.
When we first went there, I think the canteen had a roof and one wall. And as quick as we used to build it, the kids would just smash it down. So we ended up filling the walls with rebarb, concrete, and all that sort of thing. We got that in order. But it's a lot of the local people were good to us. Middendorp Electrical, Mitre 10, they give us lights, and even approached, I don't know, I think back then the SEC, and we wanted some lamp posts, and they end up just dropping off brand new GAL light towers and all this sort of thing. And it was good. Ford at Frankston used to be quite involved. They had a double-decker bus that they used to drop off for the meetings, which is actually, I believe, buried down by the toilets. It's still there. And that was all good. And I've heard recently of some of the grants that the BMX Club has been given. Gee, we used to write to everybody, and I think one year we got off the council $500, and we thought we were doing terrific. But I believe you've received some really good grants recently.
So my involvement in the club, moving into sort of my elite year levels, if you can call it that, was always one of wanting to give back. Definitely coaching was a big thing for me, particularly at the Frankston Club. I sort of grew up with a lot of the guys around me, and on occasions I'd always try and sort of point out to them a few tips and tricks, and then that sort of developed into, I think, Wednesday nights primarily, and then the odd weekends where we run coaching sessions. And it was just basic training and tips for people that were wanting to develop into better riders.
I remember the club champs and that, where you had the little trophies each round to fill up the plate, and then that was when Lindsay Wallace used to do the laser cutting, and they had the shark fin trophy, and you put your little medallions every one. Just filling that up every week, getting excited for that. that was really cool. And every year it was different shape. One year it was a sprocket with I think it was one meeting a month, and you got your little plaque, and towards the end there was some seconds and thirds in there, and it was just really fun as a little kid to get your board and fill it all up with the little plaques each week.
Coming down to this track now, it's certainly changed a hell of a lot from what it used to be.
I remember the track from the late 80s when I was a kid.
You used to be able to pedal between jumps, there was that bigger gap, but nowadays it's more about your pumping and jumping skills.
Then there was a lot more pedaling involved and so forth, but back then there used to be this really cool corner. I think it was like the third corner or something like that, and it was a high-speed sweeper, and you could crank this thing, and at the back end of it was this little roller, so you were on the pedals and you were gassing this corner and tipping the bike in, and you had to manual over this thing at the same time. Otherwise you're out of control.
We used to run knobby tyres, and the track would very rarely see a broom unless some kid had fallen off and they'd put all the stones into a pile, so they'd move them out the way because they were that loose, the tracks. But now we're all running slick tyres and yeah, putting black marks from tyres skidding on the track. That's how hard the surfaces are. I mean, things have certainly changed.
I'm trying to take the club in a positive aspect. I want to make it more family orientated, you know. It is a family orientated sport, and I think it's great. There's a lot of people in the sport that are very friendly. Well, I've found friendly. I haven't found it to be a real cliquey club. Like I've been involved in other clubs that can be cliquey. I've found everyone to be pretty good and sort of lend a hand. And it's just a real good, clean atmosphere for the sport too.
More clubbies for a track such as Frankston brings more local residents to the club. It builds the sport, it builds what the club is. You know, without the members, you don't have a club. You don't have the volunteers, you don't have the riders, you don't have the fun. And that's another big aspect of this club, is they're really introducing a lot of fun into the sport. I'm sure they've got some big plans for some fun things that they're going to be doing on their Friday night clubbies. But you know, look, as a club, they're going to keep growing, and we hope to see them get bigger and better.